Rachel was the kind of person people called strong, not because she had a loud voice or commanding presence, but because she carried pain without showing it. She knew how to smile through storms, how to encourage others while crumbling inside. People came to her for prayer, for guidance, for peace, but no one saw how close she was to falling apart. The girl who never cried, Rachel learned early in life that tears didn't always bring comfort. When she was 7, her father walked out. No explanation, no bouvier, just the echo of a door slamming shut. Her mother, though loving, was overwhelmed, juggling jobs and exhaustion. There wasn't time to grieve, only time to survive. Rachel decided then, if I don't cry, I won't fall apart. And she kept that promise. Through high school heartbreak, through college stress, through betrayal from the friend she thought would be her maid of honor, she stayed silent, held it in, held it together, at least on the outside. The ministry that burned her by 25, Rachel was leading worship, running Bible studies, and working full-time in nonprofit. Her voice was beautiful, her spirit sincere, but her soul was tired. People didn't notice. They just kept asking more of her. You're so anointed. You're the only one who gets me. Can you pray with me? Rachel said yes to everything. She thought it was what God wanted. But inside, she was unraveling. The fall had happened on a Wednesday. Rachel stood on stage, leading worship like she always did. But this time, her hands trembled. Her heart raced. Mid-song, the room began spinning. She dropped the mic, collapsed. Everyone gasped. Voices blurred. She heard someone say, "She just passed out. Get help." And then, darkness. The diagnosis doctors said it was extreme exhaustion. Her body was screaming what her heart had been whispering for years. I can't carry this anymore. She was forced to take time off. Stepped away from ministry. Turned off her phone. The church tried to be supportive. But some whispers started. Maybe she wasn't as strong as we thought. We relied too much on her. She probably just needs more faith. Rachel heard them all, and something inside her shattered. Not because of the collapse, but because even in her weakest moment, people still wanted her to be strong. Alone with her thoughts for weeks, she didn't leave her apartment. No calls, no meetings, no ministry. At first, it felt like rest, but then it felt like punishment. Maybe God's done with me. Maybe I was only useful when I was useful. The Bible on her nightstand stayed closed. Worship music felt like noise. She sat in silence, watched raindrops on windows, counted the cracks in her ceiling, and felt like she was fading. The letter she never sent one night. Rachel wrote a letter in her journal. She never sent it, never planned to. It was addressed to God. Dear Jesus, I thought you called me. I thought you had a plan for me. But now I don't hear you. I don't feel you. You saw what happened. You saw how they forgot me the second I couldn't give anymore. Is this what being chosen feels like? I'm tired, God. I don't want to perform anymore. If you're still here, show me. Because I feel invisible. She closed the journal, pushed it under the bed, and cried for the first time in years. The quiet room, the next morning, she woke to quiet. Not the heavy kind, the sacred kind. She sat on the couch, clutching a mug of tea, and for the first time in weeks, she whispered, "Are you still here?" No thunder, no lightning, just a feeling, warm, gentle, like arms around her soul. A whisper in her spirit said, I never left. She wept again, not from sorrow, but from the first flicker of hope. Something starts to shift. The next few days were different. She didn't suddenly return to ministry, didn't start preaching or posting again, but she opened her Bible, not to prepare a sermon, just to listen. And the words that stood out felt written just for her. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. You did not choose me, but I chose you. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. Rachel began to wonder, could he still be calling me? Even now, even after the collapse, even after the silence, healing doesn't always begin with a miracle. Sometimes it starts with silence. And Rachel was now living in that silence. The world moves on while she remained in stillness. The world outside kept turning. Her ministry replaced her. The church hired someone new. Social media moved on to other voices, newer stories. People who used the text daily stopped. Her inbox dried up. Her calendar stayed blank. At first, it hurt. Then it numbed. Rachel sat in the middle of her quiet apartment and whispered, "If I disappeared, would anyone even notice?" Shame wears many masks. She didn't realize how deeply shame had disguised itself in her life. It wasn't just guilt from burnout. It was the sneaky voice that said, "You only mattered when you were productive. You were only useful because you were strong. Now that you're broken, you're disposable." Rachel tried to pray, but words escaped her. She tried to sing, but her voice felt hollow. So instead she sat. She waited, and for the first time, she allowed herself to grieve. Not just for what she lost, but for all the years she performed instead of lived. The visit that changed everything. One Sunday afternoon, her doorbell rang. It startled her. She hadn't had visitors in weeks. When she opened the door, Lydia stood there, a friend from her early ministry days, someone who had moved away but hadn't forgotten. Lydia held out a bag of groceries and smiled. "You were on my heart. I don't know why. I just needed to come." Rachel broke down in tears. They sat on the floor, eating crackers and fruit, sharing silence and memory. Lydia listened, not once trying to fix her. "You don't have to be okay right now," Lydia whispered. "You just have to be honest." And for Rachel, that felt like a breath of life. The dream that night, Rachel had a dream. She stood in a vast, dark field. The wind was howling. She was holding broken pottery, shattered pieces of something once beautiful. She knelt, trying to fit them back together, but they wouldn't stick. Then a light appeared, not a blinding one, a warm glow walking toward her. It was Jesus. He knelt beside her, touched the broken pottery, and said, "You were never meant to fix this alone." He began to piece it together, gently, slowly, but not to restore it to how it was. No, the vessel was different now. It had cracks, golden lines where he'd mended it. It was more beautiful than before. She woke up weeping. A question from God. The next morning, Rachel journaled the dream, and in prayer, she heard a quiet question from God. What if the breaking wasn't the end, but the beginning? She wrestled with it all day. Could her collapse have been sacred? Could the silence have been space for healing? Could she still be chosen? Even now, the return to the mirror. Rachel stood in front of her bathroom mirror for the first time in weeks. Not just to brush her hair or wash her face, but to look. She stared into her own eyes. For the first time, she didn't see failure. She saw a woman, fragile, yes, but faithful. And in the silence, she heard it. "You are still mine." Tears rolled down her cheeks. Not because she was healed, but because the healing had begun. Saying no without guilt. Over the next few weeks, people began to check in again. Small offers, casual invitations. "Hey, could you help with this event? We're doing a panel. Just share for 10 minutes? Old Rachel would have said yes out of guilt, but now she asked Jesus first. And sometimes the answer was no. "You don't have to prove anything," Jesus whispered. "You already belong." She began to protect her peace, not because she was selfish, but because she was finally learning to rest. The day she didn't pretend. One afternoon, she visited her old church. She didn't go to be noticed. She didn't wear her worship leader smile. She went as she was, quiet, simple, bored. And when people asked, "How have you been?" she didn't lie. "Healing, slowly, but I'm still here." And to her surprise, many whispered back, "Me too." It turns out, people weren't looking for perfection. They were looking for permission to be real. And Rachel had just given it. God doesn't always call from mountaintops. Sometimes he speaks in a whisper, soft, steady, and unforgettable. And for Rachel, that whisper was about to change everything. The journal entry that sparked fire began with an ordinary journal entry. One morning, after brewing coffee and watching the sun spill across her kitchen floor, Rachel opened her notebook. She didn't write for anyone else. Not for a blog, not for a post, just for herself and for God. She began to write, "Lord, I'm scared to return to anything. What if I break again? What if I'm not strong enough? But if you still want me, I'll follow your whisper." She didn't know why, but tears hit the page. And somewhere between the ink and the ache, she heard it, gentle but unmistakable. "I don't need your strength. I need your surrender." The return to the garden that afternoon, She walked to the small community garden behind her apartment. It had once been her escape, a quiet place to think, breathe, and pray. She hadn't been there in over a year. Now, stepping through the gate felt sacred. Birds chirped, leaves rustled. Sunlight filtered through branches like golden lace. She sat on a weathered bench, closed her eyes, and whispered, "Speak, Lord. I am listening." And he did, not in thunder, not in visions, but in that deep knowing that can only come from heaven. You were never disqualified. You were being refined. And now, you're ready for what I always planned. The open door a few days later, Rachel received a message from Lydia. "Hey, I'm helping with a women's shelter that's launching a creative arts group. The women there have deep wounds, kind of like ours. Would you be willing to lead a small writing group? No pressure, just you being real." Rachel read it twice. A year ago, she would have said no. Not because she didn't care, but because she didn't believe she had anything left to give. But now something stirred. She remembered the gold-lined pottery in her dream. The vessel broken, but more beautiful after Jesus touched it. She said yes. The circle of stories the first day was quiet. 6 women sat in a circle, each with a blank notebook and guarded eyes. Rachel didn't start with scripture. She didn't try to preach. She just said, "Let's write a letter to the person who hurt you the most." You don't have to share it. You just have to be honest. At first, there was silence. But slowly, pens moved. Eyes watered. Hearts opened. By week 3, stories were being shared aloud. One woman wrote, "I didn't think I had a voice anymore, but now I see it was never taken, just buried." Rachel smiled. Buried things can bloom. The message within the mess. One night after group, Rachel sat alone in her car. She looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror and whispered, "You're doing it, girl. You're showing up again." But more than that, she was seeing a new version of herself. Not the performer. Not the perfectionist. Not even the girl who collapsed. She was a woman who carried holy fire in cracked clay. And she was finally learning what that meant. A whisper confirmed weeks later. While reading Isaiah 61, the words leapt off the page. "He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives, to comfort all who mourn, and to give them a crown of beauty instead of ashes." Rachel gasped. It wasn't just scripture anymore. It was her mission. "That's me," she whispered. "That's what you're doing in me, and through me." The letter from a stranger after one of her group sessions, Rachel found a handwritten note slipped into her bag. It read, "Thank you, not for fixing me, but for reminding me I wasn't too far gone. I thought God hated me. Now I think he stayed. Because he sent you." She held the note to her chest and sobbed. Not because of pride, but because for the first time in a long time, she felt used by God again. Not through platform, but through presence. The shift something inside Rachel clicked. She didn't need a stage, or applause, or perfect theology. She just needed to keep showing up, broken and willing. And as she did, people around her began to rise too. Not because she had all the answers, but because she had survived. And people trust survivors. The final whisper that sealed it one night, she asked God in prayer, "What do you really see when you look at me now?" And the answer came, not in thunder or dreams. Just a quiet whisper, "I see what broke you, and I still call you mine." Not tolerated, not overlooked, chosen. Restoration doesn't mean returning to what was. It means becoming everything you were meant to be, despite what broke you. And Rachel was becoming whole again. A new rhythm for the first time in years. Rachel had peace without pressure. She woke up not to perform, but to live. Morning walks, silent prayers, moments with God that didn't involve preparing a sermon or lesson. She began volunteering at the shelter weekly, journaling again, and even playing worship music for herself. And with every quiet day, something repaired itself inside her. Not the ministry version of her life, but her soul. The call she didn't expect. One morning, her phone rang. It was Pastor Joy, the woman who'd mentored her years ago. "Rachel," she said warmly, "we're holding a retreat for leaders who've experienced burnout. We'd love for you to speak." Rachel hesitated. "I don't know if I'm ready." Pastor Joy responded gently. Maybe you're not being asked to teach from strength. Maybe you're being asked to minister from scars. That settled it. Rachel said yes. The retreat, it was a cozy mountain lodge, filled with leaders who once carried torches but now only held ashes. Rachel stood before them. Not polished, not rehearsed, just real. You are not broken beyond use, she told them. You're being rebuilt differently, and that is holy. She shared her collapse, her silence, her slow rise. She cried. They cried. And afterward, one by one, people came up, not to congratulate her, but to confess. I felt like a fraud. I thought I was too broken to lead. Your story feels like mine. Rachel realized something. The more honest she became, the more others found freedom. The conversation with her mother that same week, Rachel visited her mom. They sat on the porch, watching the sky turn golden. After a long silence, her mother said, "I wish I had been stronger back then when your father left." Rachel reached for her hand. "You were surviving, and so was I. But we're here now, and we're healing." They cried together, not the helpless kind, the healing kind. The voice returns one morning. Rachel stood in her apartment, humming an old worship song. Suddenly, words poured out. Lead, melody, a song of surrender, of scars, of survival. She grabbed her guitar and began to play. The lyrics weren't for a stage. They were for a soul, hers. But when she shared it with Lydia, her friend said, "People need to hear this." Rachel posted a raw video, just her and a guitar. The response was overwhelming. Not viral, but holy. Hundreds messaged, "This is the first time I've cried in months. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for reminding me I'm not disqualified." And Rachel realized her ministry wasn't dead. It had just changed form. A visit to her old church months later, Rachel was invited to share a testimony at her old church. She walked in, not as the woman who collapsed, but as the woman who rose again. When she stepped up to the pulpit, there was no shame left in her. She looked into the crowd and said, "You saw me fall, but you're about to see what grace rebuilt." Her voice trembled. Not with fear, with fire. She didn't speak about her title or gifts. She spoke about Jesus, the one who stayed, rebuilt, and still called her chosen. Closure, not revenge. After the service, an old ministry partner approached her, one who hadn't defended her during the whispers and collapse. "Rachel, I am sorry. I should have checked on you. I didn't know how." She smiled. "Thank you. And I forgive you." He blinked in surprise. "That easy?" She nodded. "It's not easy, but it's necessary." Because Rachel wasn't living from pain anymore. She was living from purpose. The revelation in the rain one evening. Walking home in a light drizzle, Rachel laughed. She remembered the version of herself who thought her story was over. She whispered into the rain, "God, you really do use all of it, don't you?" A soft breeze brushed her face. And in her spirit, she heard again, "Yes." Even the breaking. Especially the breaking.